Hey guys, just wanted to check in. It's been a couple of weeks since I've put together a video for you guys. I wanted to start to connect a few things because we're getting to an important part of the semester. We're going to take stuff you guys have been working on and start to put it together. You guys are working on the recommendation report, um, which will bring together a lot of the work you guys have been doing already. Um, but what I want to mainly do in this video is talk about the Whiplash book because this week we're discussing the final chapter as well as anything in the book you want to talk about. And so I was just going to share a couple of things that kind of jumped out at me. I really enjoyed the book. I found it to be a fairly easy read, and it had a lot in it. But so much of what these principles talk about, I just see really play out in so many ways. So these are some things that kind of stood out to me. This idea of how education still follows the traditional model. A lot of you talked in some of your first posts about what the authors were saying about education. To me, it seems like we keep trying to fix this traditional model, but should we just throw that model out and go with a model that's more like the pull over push concept, which I found the push over pull concept to be really, it really kind of hit home with me. And that the push over pull is the power of pull over push. It leverages modern communication technologies and the decreased cost of innovation to move power from the core to the edges, enabling serendipitous discoveries and providing opportunities for innovators to mine their own passions. And so I saw pull over push. In my mind, I was thinking push would be, say if I had a business and I had this big warehouse with all this stuff, and I was trying to push that stuff out to the buyers, and so I had all this inventory there. Whereas pull would be, rather than, carrying huge inventory, which we see that happening with, a lot of the brick and mortar stores that held a lot of inventory. A lot of those are closing. But the idea of pull is, looking at what's available in the short term and bringing that together and using that for whatever materials or inventory we need to provide, what the buyers need. But let me give you another example, and this example is very pertinent to me right now. We've been working on a new master's degree in the English department. It's sort of like a tech writing degree, but it's more cutting edge. It's meant to address kind of what we've been doing in this class, writing for the web, or the kind of more current way to talk about that is, digital online communication. Um, it has taken us 2 years to try to get the proposal accepted and through the system. And now it looks like we may even be pushed back a little bit more. So that to me is an example of, it takes so long to get something like that done when there's this huge need to, you know, give students opportunities to, learn more and experience the kinds of things they're going to need to do to go out and, work in the digital environment and all the digital writing and managing that they're going to have to do. So, it would really, in this case of our new master's degree, I mean, if we could just, speed that up and, maybe take a semester to get things approved and then, start offering some of the classes and, start putting together a plan for some students and kind of see how it works. But things go much more slower than that in higher education for sure. I liked this when they talked about the mushroom hunters. Mushroom hunters have to become extremely mindful and present and allow their eyes and their minds to become aware of the patterns and movements that we normally filter out. It is only then that the mushrooms or any otherwise unperceivable opportunities become visible. One of the things that I do a lot of my scholarship and research on, and I do teach classes in this as well, is this idea of visual rhetoric. because there's so much that goes on that is happening with the, what we see, and we don't realize it, and it really has an effect on, how people take information in, what they do with it, how they interpret it, what are the results. And it's not just a lot of times people will think if you say visual rhetoric, they'll just think ads. Well, there is visual rhetoric in ads, but there's visual rhetoric in everything we do. Like this page right here, this area where there's not any text or anything else, that's known as white space. And this is white, but it can be in anything that we're looking at, where there aren't any images or any text. So it's that open space, and this right here frames, this white space frames the text for the reader. So, if all these words were just spread out over the whole page, to fill up this whole page, it would be very much harder for the reader to see, how these sentences are together in a paragraph. So there's always, the other thing that's going on here, there are margins. That's another part of how the visual is set up. The visual practices that we have, those, are consistent. So, things like margins, and that helps us to be able to understand. So if you have an opportunity, we have a course called Visual Rhetoric that will be offered in the spring. I'm not teaching it this time, but it's something that I do a lot with and work with. So if you're interested, just let me know and I can talk to you more about that too. And in our graduate program, I do teach classes on visual rhetoric. I've taught several. So if you're interested in that, just let me know, because I love to talk about the topic. And then this idea of breaking out of ways of thinking so that breakthroughs can happen. I get this a lot, and, it's certainly not that students are doing the wrong thing, or they're not trying to think, or they're not good students, but, the educational system's kind of taught us to, look for the rules, look for this idea of what is the right answer, what is being asked, what does the teacher want me to do, what do they need me to do in order to pass, or in order to get, a lot of times it's, to get the best grade, which is not a bad thing. But, like for example, you guys are putting together this recommendation report, and, some students have said, well, how do I want them to set it up? And a lot of times good teaching is seen as if I give you all the answers. I say, okay, here's exactly what your recommendation report should look like. And that's not a bad thing to do in some situations, but in this class, I make the assumption that a lot of you guys, have had some experience, probably writing some kind of a report. You can certainly go out and, look for information about reports. But most importantly is, this idea of so that you can have a breakthrough and not get stuck in this just what is the right answer. And that's why I keep encouraging you to think about your audience, because your audience is not the teacher. So often in classes we think we try to, write to the teacher and make it make sense to the teacher. But for your recommendation reports, you are writing to, the people that, work with that website, that website belongs to their group or program. So, it's that idea of practicing, thinking in those ways, how to do that. Because it's a very important thing that, we always have to do, whatever project we're trying to work on. So, I like this idea of breaking out, and they even talk about this concept of breaking, and, breaking things so that we can push those things aside and see what we're not thinking about, what we're not looking at. But we tend to think of breaking as being bad. But, it's not necessarily bad. It's, they make the point in the book about, all the things that didn't go right. and that led to the breakthroughs. And so anyway, those are some things that stood out to me. Now, as you guys talk about the readings, I mean, you can talk about this week. If you want to just stay on the conclusion chapter, you can. But feel free to just kind of share whatever your experience was, and what jumped out at you from the book. What connections did you make? Were there things you didn't agree with, or do you see ways to apply some of this, or questions you may have? A lot of times, what we're exposed to will, add additional questions. It takes us farther away from the right answer, so that can happen too. So anyway, I'm going to cut this one off kind of short. My sinuses have started getting kind of funky on me, so my voice is a little weaker than usual. Now I will post something probably by early next week about how we're going to, once because this week you're turning in the recommendation report, a draft of that, and I'm going to talk to you and explain to you what we're going to do with those next, how I want you to engage in what I call, review of the document, so that we can work on it so that it is going to make sense to your audience. So anyway, look forward to that. Everybody's doing a great job. Keep it up. And I will get back to you with that next video. Like I said, hopefully beginning of next week. Thanks for all your hard work.